Greetings and welcome to Enigmatic. I am dealing with the most vicious bout of insomnia right now. Okay, it's not the most vicious, I've definitely been through worse. But all that being said, sorry if I'm a little bit abrasive. Excuse me. So, you know me, I like to look at the claims that people want to make and the nature of those claims and how well they kind of stand up to other observations, like what the veracity is when we put those claims under scrutiny. And there's one that I come across. Sometimes it's through social media, sometimes it's talking to people, sometimes it's like on the news. And this connects to the Generation Wars video that I did a while ago. But, somebody will say something like, well, back in my day, we just sucked it up and bucka bucka bucka. And kids these days are sissies, things like that. And it's very much a surface level observation. I kind of notice that people have observations about things or they want to make a certain claim, but it stops there. So in this instance, it's like, why are people different, from one period of time to another period in time? Because to me, the comparison is like comparing apples to oranges, to the person who wanted to say like, oh, we were outside more and we got more fresh air. Yes, this is probably true. But it was also easier for you to do that because your environment at the time didn't have the technology that is in our environment now. So it's not an even comparison. Not only that, you can't get mad at the kid. I think I also said this in Generation Wars. We inherit current happenings and occurrences from past generations. So, the old fart that wants to say that kids are sissies now, it's like you can blame your generation because in some way your generation was a part of that. The other thing, too, about it that's interesting to me is if we look at it in terms of awareness. So saying, oh, kids are sissies nowadays, let's look at it through the lens of mental health. A kid is more depressed or is sadder, things like that. Today, mental health is talked about regularly, and that's been an evolution. We had to learn things about the mind and the brain, things that we could kind of rely on in terms of creating a model, because mental health issues before that, the history of it is pretty terrible. If you had anxiety, you had depression, you had schizophrenia, it was often associated or attributed to some supernatural force or source. And that didn't do people very well, that caused a lot of trauma, and it just ends up passing that trauma on. And so that's kind of the question that I would like to ask, a person who's like, oh, kids are sissies nowadays, is maybe they're more upfront with how they're feeling than you felt you were allowed to be. Does that sound about right? Because the thing is that I don't necessarily think people are any more or less sensitive now than before. I think that now we're not using mechanisms to bypass what we do feel, and we're able to be honest about what our feelings are and our emotions are and our current state is. Whereas, we go back 70, 100 years, maybe even 50 years, and talking about a lot of these things gets you vilified from communities, can get you locked up, can get you medicated in ways that you don't agree to, that can only serve to worsen your life. There's a period in time where, like, women, you don't talk about menopause. You talk about menopause and bad things happen to you. But now we have a different understanding. We understand that a lot of mental health issues and disorders come from a combination of biological factors, environmental factors, societal factors, home life. And so what that person is saying, oh, they're sissies now. like it's meaningless. Because the thing about it is, how many people have you hurt because you didn't know how to be upfront with your emotions? How much more trauma did you cause because you didn't know how to address your trauma? Like, you're not actually tougher. If anything, you might actually be weaker because you don't know how to express what other people are expressing that you want to call sissies. It's about like an access of emotion and being self-aware and being vulnerable and strong enough in that vulnerability to be able to say, this is how I feel, and this is okay to be able to state how I feel. But again, this is also another environmental, situation. Our environment now, it's a lot more welcoming to talking about mental health than in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, even 80s and 90s. My point at making this is that saying things like that, that people are sissies from different generations or people are too sensitive nowadays, not only is it an error, what positive benefit comes from that? How does it make the situation better? How does it solve people being quote unquote sissies? It doesn't. It's just another instance where, people just want to talk and have egg on their face. So this is a little bit of a weird one. I just wanted to go off for a second. It's also a play on consistency. Here we go. Yeah. Anyway, give me a like, give me a subscribe, share it with everybody. And I hope you have a great Tuesday. I'm going to try to figure out what to do with myself because, like I said, I didn't sleep, so I'm all over the place. But, yeah, sending you lots of love, and I hope you have a great day. Take care. Bye.